Hello.
Hey.
Hey, this is the first episode we recorded in 2024. Is it appropriate for us to say Happy New Year to everyone?
Or just New Year, we have good weeks, so why would we have a good year?
Good year. But we established last time that we don't kind of want to get into advertising business, right?
Fair enough.
Anyway, it's somewhat late in January that we record the first episode of 2024. We had to postpone a couple of times. That was all my fault. But we are now here. We are recording. This is episode number 34. We're still here. The host is me, Dima Malenka.
I'm Slava, and today we're going to talk about ideal weeks, whatever that means.
All right. Yeah, that's a very interesting and exciting topic.
But before we get there, there is a follow-up.
Yeah, there are two bits of follow-up from my side. Remember, in one of the previous episodes, I was amazed by a word discombobulated. And I mentioned at that time that was the first time I ever heard or came across this word in a podcast or something. And lo and behold, like several weeks after we recorded that episode, I was watching a very random video on YouTube about two guys kind of skiing in kind of extreme conditions on extreme slopes. And in the end, they used the word discombobulated twice. I was so amazed by this, so that I wanted to share this fact with you. Like, for many, many, many years of my life, I never heard this word. But this last year, 2023, I heard it 4 times. And I think it's amazing.
4 times from 4 different sources, or?
No, it was like 2 occurrences were in one podcast and 2 more occurrences in that YouTube video that I just mentioned.
Are they related?
No, not at all.
That's a very, very unlikely event, but it happened.
Right, it happened, and it's interesting. So, yep, this is a nice word, and I think I already used it once myself. Not sure if people were impressed, but there you go. One more item. We also, we discussed in the whole episode, the first book of Bobbyverse, and then I also got a bit discombobulated about the number of books there, and we clarified that there are 4 books, and the 5th book is in the making, and some of the later books promise some interesting ideas to discuss. I listened to all of those books. I think that they were as good as the first one, for what it's worth. I was a little bit disappointed where you promised kind of exploration of ideas of kind of human origin, sentience, and stuff like that. And it was just in one of the last books, it was just a conversation between two characters in in the story. That was all of the exploration, so I was a little bit disappointed, but still I had good time preparing for my half marathon, running and listening to those books. It was good time. Thanks for bringing this up.
And sorry for disappointing you about
no. It was still interesting. And I got ideas to explore nonetheless.
Then, after the follow-up, there is a theme corner, our new, old new category that we used to have and we didn't have for a while, and now we do have again.
Right. So in the very last episode of the previous year, which is the episode previous to this one, we discussed our themes for 2024, and time has passed, and we have some things to share about how it's going. Right, the amount of notes you put in Theme Corner is astonishing. I think all of the seasonal, yearly, and triennial themes that you have a little bit of exposure there. Where do you want to start, with smaller or bigger things?
I guess we could start with bigger ones because the triennial of Glide is the bigger topic, and January happened to be a season of strategic sessions. I happened to facilitate 3 in different businesses and work with Sevi as well. And I should say that this process really gets me into the state of flow. Like whenever we discuss the long-term planning and the trends and the risks and the opportunities and the priorities, this thing click. And I spent 2 days, this Thursday and Wednesday, it was Thursday and Friday, facilitating a strategic session for a lab. And it's a totally different kind of days. I can't really feel the time. I'm not tired by the end of the day. And the way my mind works is really astonishing. So strategic sessions is something that I probably wouldn't like to do on a weekly basis all year around. But this strategic season in December and January is really captivating.
Well, this is interesting. And do you know? Do you think you have an idea of what gives you that feeling of flow? Is it kind of seeing other people, connecting the dots, and kind of being lighten up about the great things that they can do, or is it something else?
I think it's not that much about people, but probably about the level of challenge, because I have to manage the group dynamics and the sense. And it's challenging enough and it's thrilling. So I'm really excited to resolve it and to find the solution and to find the meaning and to connect all the dots. And this process of getting it all together is something that gets me into this state of glide that I defined as my triennial theme.
Right, great. It looks like the triennial of glide is going just fine. More power to you.
It is. And since the sub-theme here is the year of meaning, I decided not to reflect on the strategic sessions since they were in the triennial. And I realized that there is not much to write about because I had this slow season. After our last episode, there were 2 weeks off and then some time off in between. And I struggled creating the meaning out of nothing. It's much easier, like when the strategic sessions came back and the business was getting to usual or to normal. It's much easier to journal these days. But for the first few weeks, I really had like just short notes in this section of Year of Meaning because, like, all right, I spent a day in the forest. I can't really create a lot of meaning. It was just a recreation time. And I was not thinking about something or reflecting on something. And my journaling slowed down. But then when I came back to the work routines, it kind of bumped back. And now I'm journaling daily again.
It's interesting. I think in our last discussion, you mentioned that you also wanted to bring meaning into the kind of restful activities that you engage in. And I was thinking like before you mentioned this, I was thinking that if I were doing something like this, I would be probably using journaling to explore like I was engaging in recreational activities, and then I would try to maybe explore if those activities were meaningful, and if yes, what made them so, or if not, what made them less meaningful that I would have wanted. Did you want to do anything like that at all?
I was aiming to, but then I realized that things I do, like the metal puzzles things, for instance, they take time. Like sometimes it takes a week to put it together, and you can't really reflect on like, I built a leg or I did something. The same about the book. Like I'm reading a very nice fantasy book right now, but like, all right, I'm quarter into the book. Like, yes, there are some nice ideas, but is it a reason to journal or it's just my notes during the reading? And I think that when I finish the book, it's kind of more concluding, and then it makes more sense to reflect.
This is interesting. I also have a couple of things related to journaling, but I guess we'll get them we'll get to them.
All right. Actually, I have just the little thing on the offline winter.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was this country house retreat for a week. I wasn't there a week, but I was preparing for half a week, and then I spent there a few days during the New Year celebration. And nature does something amazing, like just being in the wild, in the quiet, and seeing the stars is something that is really refreshing. I'm not sure I would handle it on a daily basis if I just lived in house like that. But escaping from the city is a really refreshing feeling. So that's something that invested a lot into my offline winter, and something I probably should do more, especially when it gets warmer, because right now it's quite chilly here.
What do you think makes it special, like retreats like those? Is it change of scenery, or is it something else?
Well, the easiest thing that comes to my mind is that I don't take any laptops with me, so there's not many distractions.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't that many distractions in the first place, but then the way you spend time there, because you basically plan this time off to do something, and we could spend the entire evening just watching the fireplace, and that was fulfilling by itself.
Interesting. Well, one of the things that I think may contributes, at least for me, to those experiences being a little bit special is the change in ambient sounds. Like when you live in a city, you have like the constant ambient noise of cars passing by, like things of that nature. And when you go out of the city to a place like that, it's a lot quieter, especially during the night, and it makes a difference, I think. Well, at least for me, this is one of the things I notice when I go there.
I agree. And I noticed that you also added a few points here. I suggest that you keep the secret for the theme of yours, because basically your episode is supposed to be the next episode. So right. I would like to ask you more next time. And the journaling is this meta thing. So let's just jump to it right now.
Okay. Yeah. The journal. So wait, let me take this step back, because I was distracted and I may have looked a bit discombobulated. Here, you're suggesting that we discuss my kind of topical things in the next episode, right? Well,
since both you and I have our own episodes, I would just split the theme corner into
that's fair. Yeah, that's totally fair. And on the journaling note, because you're right, that this is a meta thing. I think I mentioned, maybe not on the episode, but in our conversation, that I'm going to use a bullet journal as my theme journal. By and large, it kind of turns out that bullet journal is not too different from any other journal you can get. They include some stickers, they include some instructions on how you would want to use it, and typically bullet journal is the entire system is about keeping track of your to-dos and kind of managing tasks more than anything else. And they have some special pages like yearly overview, monthly overview kind of thing, which are nice and useful. But other than that, I was a bit disappointed that it's just like any other notebook. Yes, it's nicely made. I got this one from Lectrum 1917 or something along those lines. So the paper is nice and everything is nice, but I'm like, yeah, should I have paid this much for this specific notebook if I'm not using it to the fullest extent possible? But it is still nice. But what I was really surprised with, is that if you Google, and I will maybe include some links to YouTube videos where people describe and film and show how they set up their bullet journals with millions of colors, pencils, markers, liners, and stuff like that. This is like whole another world out there, and I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm using like two colors to put the questions I answer for around my themes, and that's it.
Simplicity is the key.
Yep. And next time I'll get, I guess, a simpler journal, simpler notebook.
Once again, I recommend Studio Neat. Like, these guys released another very simple and very handy notebook. I don't remember the name, but it's there.
Yep. Yeah, we will find it and include a link in the show notes. And also, like, I'll link a couple of Bojo bullet journal videos as well, if you're interested.
So that was a 15-minute introduction to the actual topic.
Yeah, we haven't spoken since last year. Like, what do you want, man? You need to catch up.
That is true. Speaking about these long breaks, I think this is the reason why I wanted to talk to you about the ideal weeks, because usually holidays time, it's when you take a break and then you kind of have the fresh view on what your routine looks like, and you get an opportunity to reschedule some of your meetings and see which of them still make sense, which of them should change, which of them should be cancelled, which of them should be added, and what your overall layout generally should look like. I've been practicing this thing for years, and I think that today is an amazing opportunity to discuss it, because my regular weeks haven't started yet, and I would like to reflect with you on whether the approach of weekly planning overall works for you, how does it work, and what would our ideal weeks look like.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds super interesting and super intriguing. I'm also in the period where I still trying to figure out a new and quote unquote better routine for myself. And also it happens to be that I think of planning in terms of weeks. I think somehow a week is a natural cycle for me to plan things around.
And before we get into, I kind of expect a pitfall on the word ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So could you, on the shore, before we start in advance, tell me your attitude towards like ideal, perfect, impeccable? Are you okay using those, or we should just substitute them into preferable week or desirable week or something more?
This is a great question. And when I noticed this question in our show notes, I feel like, oh wow, I do have things to say there. I think maybe three things. Let's figure out if I'm going to forget any of those. First, I think in general, I'm worried and skeptical about using plain adjectives about things. Like if someone says that, yeah, this is a cool movie, and could you please explain like what's cool about this? Like, can you give a more tangible description of what this thing is, rather than giving us some sort of superlative to describe it? So I don't like those kind of things, like cool, awesome, fancy, and that kind of thing. However, even with that, there are several words like ideal, maybe perfect, which I'm sort of okay with. And this is the second thing. Like I think especially in this context, I think I'm okay with using them, because the third thing is that I feel like ideal week means more. It's more of a term, if you know what I'm trying to say. So it's not week which is ideal as an adjective attached to it, but ideal week is a concept in and of itself, and I feel like we are talking about this as a concept, and that therefore, at least in this context, I'm kind of okay with using perfect and ideal.
All right, that's surprising, because I thought we might have to substitute something, but that's a term for me too, and I feel very comfortable using it. So I just wanted to double check it.
But to be honest, it took me some time. I wanted to say a little bit of time, but I'm not sure if it was a little or not so little, to figure out that this in this context, this is indeed a term, rather than kind of constructing a week, which, for example, you would call ideal for yourself or for whatever goals that you set for you.
So maybe we should start with a little pre-story, the way I landed on this thing. And basically every 4 to 6 months, I take a step back and I look at what my routines should look like in a few months. I don't do it like from Monday. I don't do it really fast, but I think like, it's January now. What should my week look like, let's say, in April? Then I just pick a week of April. I go to my calendar and I try to see what are the repetitive things that keep coming from January. Like what are the weekly meetings or some kind of tasks that happen to be regular and are there. Because then on top of this repetitive stuff, you also get some tactical things that just jump in, and the urgency and everything else. So if you scroll like 3 months forward, you can basically see what your week before the urgent tasks appear looks like. And I think what I would like it to be, like, should it be a day full of meetings and then 3 days full of other type of work? Or should it be a few meetings at a specific time every day, but the rest of the time I can do the meaningful work and something else? And I've been experimenting with it a lot, and I don't think I have the perfect recipe, but it's the process of reconsidering and meditating on what you would like your workflow to be like. And then I usually have a few months to reset it to basically April becomes my deadline when I would like my week to look like this. And I start rescheduling some of the meetings and rearranging the calls and planning my time, because sometimes it doesn't work. Like I have a theory that if Thursday will be totally free, my focus day, I'll be very productive. And then I spend a few Thursdays and like it just doesn't work that way because of reasons. And then I can reconsider it and still look into April, and given all the data and experience I had, I can now be more realistic about what it should look like.
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the way you are describing this, is it a little bit similar to idea of block planning or something along those lines? If you remember, guys on Focus podcast, I think mentioned that several times. Right.
Time blocking was one of the things that, like, but I think that they use it more like a tactical thing as well. Like when you think that you would like to do something, you just set a time block with all the preparation time, thinking time, and everything else you need, and you deep dive into this task, etc. But it could be also applied for just specific periods of the day, like the morning time or the after the lunch section, that could be split on for some regulars. Maybe before we get into some other things, I would like to get you into a little blitz now.
Yeah, let's try it. Let's see how well I'm going to do.
I'm not sure you can do well or not well. You can just answer or not. I can't really estimate if it's good or bad or anything else. But how long do you normally plan? Like on average, I mean, not something strategic, but like when you look at your work, like do you see a weekly horizon, monthly horizon, a few days forward? Certainly.
That's a great question. I think when I'm thinking about like work related stuff and things of that nature, I would usually think in kind of weekly with weekly cadences and plan things like for weeks ahead, and then maybe for months and then anything else I would not even call planning. It's just like maintaining, maybe updating visions or kind of longer term goals.
Yeah, fair enough. And when do you do it? Like, I mean, when do you sit and think like, next week should look like this, or that's the list of things I would like to do next week?
That's a Great question. I think and that there are two answers. One is I would want to do it on Friday night, Friday afternoon. And somehow I still cannot manage to have it work like that. So most commonly I'll do that Monday morning.
Mm-hmm. And what does this process look like? And do you look at your calendar, task list? Like, what's the visual aspect of planning?
I start with calendar and a list of like 1 to 3 things. 1 to 3, I mean not the numbers, but it can be any like typically it would be anything between 1 and 3 things, 3 bigger things I would want to accomplish that particular week. So I would start with the calendar and see what are the things that have to be there that I cannot move or cannot adjust, and then I work from there and try to put blocks and stuff like that to to allow myself time to work on things that are important. It does not, like as you can imagine, doesn't always work like that, but at least this is how I'm approaching it now.
Well, it's the way they say that plan is nothing, but planning is everything.
Something along those lines.
That's all about Blitz. I think I could just shortly think that it pretty much works the same for me. Like, I mostly do it on Friday. The only thing that is different that before I do planning, I reflect on the previous week. Like, I look through the entire tasks, I look at the meetings that I had and see whether I had forgotten anything. And then, since I use this Sidekick notepad, I usually have this one page with all the incoming stuff that came through me, and I see if I haven't missed something. And then I look into the next week and try to put it into priorities and timelines. And what normally happens is that I have a list of incoming tasks, inbox scope of tasks for next week. I usually see something that I want to do on Monday, so I plan my Monday in more details, and then the rest of the week is more approximate.
It's the same thing. I also do a little bit of reflection on the previous week, even though it is not as connected to the planning as it seemed to be for you. I already said several times that I'm using the tool called LogSec. It's the worst name possible, and it has a feature of journal whether it would create a page for every date, and I use that to keep track of important things that happened or kind of important information or interesting information that I received. I put, if I'm sent a link to a document or something like that, I put all stuff like that there, and then several times during the week I review that and see if there is anything I would want to follow up on or something like that. And it also informs my choices for what to do next week.
Fair enough. And what level of details do you put into these tasks? Like, when you think, I should write this note, it transforms into, I don't know, a bullet, a ticket, or let's say a task, whatever it looks like. How well defined it should be during planning, or it's enough for you just to sketch the idea that, like, all right, I'll be doing some writing about this, or you should just define, get the definition of done, like it should be that big, and I'll know that it's good by these criteria.
It's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B for me. I generally try to be as kind of specific as I can be. So, for example, if I come across a document and I want to read it more thoroughly and maybe comment or provide feedback on it, but I don't want to do it right now, I'll put a task and I will say like review and comment the document. I'll put the link to the document right there to make it kind of easier for me to do that when I get to kind of reading and reviewing different stuff. But sometimes it can be just write a note and then it would be just write a note is the top level desired outcome, and it would typically include like figuring out what the topic would be and writing, like finding something and then writing. So it is a little bit vaguer from that point of view. Now, how do you do that?
In my case, there are verbs that start in the ticket itself, in the task. And some of them start with actually like do, write, talk, or decide on something. And some of them go for consider. And these are just different types of things. By the way, statistically, I was reviewing some of my tasks. I tend to overestimate time to consider. Like I would normally book 90 minutes or 60 minutes to consider something, and then like 15 minutes and I'm done. Like, all right, that's complete. Let's move.
Well, that's interesting because for me it can be quite opposite, because there might be a question from someone else like, yeah, I want to get back to this a little bit later, and then like, all right, maybe in 15 minutes I'll be done, and then I desire to kind of cross all the T's and dot all the I's in answering that question to make sure that I'm not misleading people with the information I provide. It can take more time than that, or I can uncover hornet's nest with finding the answer for that question, which makes me kind of digress into something else as well.
Which kind of organically puts us to the next question about the free time slots that you keep in your schedule for these kind of occasions. Like, what's the amount of the time that you know for sure? Basically, I could imagine that you have some meetings that are booked and you know that this time is not yours. Then you have some tasks that you plan to do. And there theoretically should be some extra space left for some unpredictable things or underestimates or something along those lines.
To be honest, I don't plan for this kind of specifically, in that I don't put a time slot on the calendar to deal with things like that. But I sort of try to play it by the tune, in that things like that I try to dodge and find someone else to do them. Unless like there is a specific things that I would do myself, but those also would often be things that I would say, or like I need to do that, but I will not do that right away. I will need to plan it for like tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. So there's a little bit of leeway there. And then for other things, I will try to offload that to someone else, or in general, kind of keep it to maybe half an hour-ish a day. And if I say, like, all right, so I already spent my half an hour allocated for ad hoc kind of things, I will tell people, yeah, I'll get back to you tomorrow, or something along those lines. But I'm not sure if kind of the way I'm describing, I'm not sure if this is really what happens, because it might feel to me like I'm having this under control, but sometimes it does feel like I spend more time than I would want to unplanned activities.
There is actually a side effect here which could kind of help me get to the answer. Like, how often do you pull tasks from one week to the other? I mean, like, is it a usual thing for you to look on Friday and say, like, all right, these 6 things will be done next week, or I will probably finish it during the weekend?
It happens. To be honest, when looking at things like that, I don't necessarily look at tasks on the very individual level. I'm looking at those 1 to 3 things, like bigger things that I planned, and
projects,
like projectish, like slightly bigger things. And I would be somewhat unhappy with myself if I have to move those to the next week. And but that happens, I guess, every other week, maybe, sort of. I'm trying to be more realistic with my planning and expectations.
I normally have like 3 or 4 floating tasks that are very creative and totally not urgent, and they keep floating. They could be floating for half a year, like from week to week to week,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't feel any issues there. But if there is an urgent or important thing that floats to Monday, that usually is a trigger for me that something I haven't planned something accordingly. Like I haven't allocated enough time, or it wasn't planned properly in terms of like it could have been a creative task and I just didn't get a time slot for it to get it done. And usually this is an indicator for me that like I should definitely reconsider my next week to include this one. And it kind of gave me a lesson that I should not plan Friday that intensively. I should have more free spots on Friday to complete most of these things by then, before I do the planning. That's why my Friday booking time in my calendar usually ends at 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are no meetings after 2 p.m. unless there is something critical.
That makes a lot of sense. I think for me it works a little bit differently. It's when I realize that there is something unplanned, which is sort of big enough and urgent, which I realize that I need to do now, and it affects the plans. At that moment, I feel a little bit bad and try to learn the lesson. Like, how could I have planned better to not have this thing skipped my attention and stuff like that, so that I can be more intentional about how I do that. But I would also say, all right, now with this thing, I'm not doing this other thing that I planned for this week, and this is where that thing would be bumped to the next week, and some of the lessons maybe will be learned in these days or next days reflection journaling kind of thing, but it will not sit there until planning for the next week. At least for me, the way how I operate currently.
One more meta thing. Do you have the time slot for planning, like time that is allocated for planning?
Yes.
How long is it?
It's like an hour.
An hour? Like, do you use it, or is it?
No, because that's why I started smirking a little bit inside when you asked that question. When the question is, do you have time slot for planning? The answer would be yes, technically I do. But when it comes to how I use that, that's a bit willy-nilly. But I just kind of like it to be there to remind me that, no, Jude, you need to be planning now.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the actual, like, factual planning time that normally happens on a weekly basis for you? Like, do you spend 30 minutes, 15 minutes for this process?
Yeah, I think it's more effective. It's around 30 minutes or something.
All right, fair enough. And one more thing I wanted to link here is the long-term planning, because when you plan your next week, you probably look into the projects and priorities from the bigger perspective, like a quarter or half a year. I don't know what your work horizon is, but I'm pretty sure that there are some macro things that are sitting there, and you probably have to align your priorities for the next week, considering not only the urgent things, but also some long-term perspective. Is there any way you link your planning with these longer term perspectives?
Not necessarily, at least not directly. I don't think there would be. I would have time to think and make progress on bigger things, and this would be the time that where I would say, all right, so next week for this kind of bigger project, I would want to do like XYZ and maybe put either events in the calendar or kind of add something to the task list, and there is a slot to work on this project next week, so that the stuff will be moving that way.
In my case, it works in the direct relation to our objectives. Like, we have this OKR board, and before I do the planning for the next week, I stare at the OKR board, I can just filter things where I'm tagged, so I can see the initiatives and key results that I'm supposed to be working on. And I'm trying to see whether I've been procrastinating or something was in my blind zone, because sometimes I tend to focus on some things and ignore the others. And this activity kind of helps me remember what else is on the list, even though like the deadline could be in May. But I still probably should do some tiny steps considering planning and preparing the foundation for the future steps and activities. Even the study time, like what should I study today to perform better in sprint?
I think I started following your example of having kind of monthly, well, and seasonal kind of topics, and I'm now trying to leverage that as an additional kind of mechanism or organizational factor to help with planning for longer term things. For example, one of the things for me, like January is more or less, I would not call it as necessarily a January of processes or something like that, but this month I'm trying to focus on things where process work is required, like figuring out the process and organizing stuff, like putting like tooling in place and making sure that whatever it is, like follow rituals and stuff like that, just the process improvement kind of work. And I'm trying to look into multiple different areas where I have something that is related to process improvement and kind of focus on that in January, maybe spending a little bit less time on some other things, or kind of postponing some of the other interesting and exciting things until I'm out of January with all the process improvements that I wanted to do this month. So things like that also are helping me not to lose track of bigger things, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable. I think we can finally try the ideal week itself. And if I asked you to look into the future, let's say March, and imagine the first week of March, there probably will be some meetings.
Yes.
There probably will be some focus time blocks for doing work, writing, or I'm not sure what exactly you do, but doing that kind of stuff. There might be some time for other regular weekly practices, personal retro, planning slot, something that is not a meeting, not focus time for task, but another kind of routine, I don't know, reporting or whatever.
Yep.
And there might be some study time. Who knows?
Yes.
What would it look like in terms of a week? Like, would there be days dedicated to something, or would it be distributed within different days? Like, how would you organize it in the ideal way for you?
I think I would think in terms of days, right? But the day which is more focused on something rather than anything else, like focus days for focused work. Luckily, we have no meeting days, like no meeting Wednesdays in our part of the company, which is kind of helpful. You would know that people would make concerted effort not to put meetings on during that particular day, so you can kind of plan to work on your own on some of your projects. And then I would try to coalesce some of the meetings, or at least kinds of meetings, to a particular day if it is possible. Tuesday and Thursdays for meetings, and for meetings which are more regular ones, and then a little bit of Monday and maybe a little bit of Friday for less regular meetings.
What's the amount of meeting time would you have on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday? Like, would it be 4 meetings, 6 meetings, 2 meetings on average?
It depends. I think I would not necessarily measure them in number of meetings, but in meeting time. I think it can be like all the way up to like 4 hours of meetings on those on the busy days. Sometimes it can be more than that if it's something like planning season or something along those lines, where naturally there are more meetings, but it can be heavy for me.
Mm-hmm. And what about the study time or some other regular routines and practices? Where are they allocated?
They are there, and I don't necessarily plan specific time for that. And like you link to a number of different articles describing ideal week, and I'm looking at the calendars those people propose, and I just can't see how it can work. I would have a list, like on every day I would want to kind of hit my activity kind of circle on Apple Watch, so I know like I would want to do that, and I have roughly an idea of how and when I would want to do that, but I do not put this in the calendar because I know that one way or the other it's going to happen depending on the circumstances around that. And so some of the things I would plan from that perspective. I would want them to happen on that day, and then closer to that particular day, I would see like, all right, this would be the good time to do this particular thing planned for that day.
All right, that is fair.
How do you do that?
Let's roll back to the overall layout, because the thing that I've been trying to implement for the past maybe 3 months is having most of my managerial meetings on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get first half of the day for all savvy kind of management things, for meeting with department heads and getting the updates, looking at the task boards, planning, preparing for the team calls. And the second half of the day is usually related to business development team, and we synchronize there, organize all the tasks. I have all the one-to-ones there as well. And then in the evening, sometimes I have L&D community calls or something related to L&D. But then Tuesday is usually a day without regular meetings. So like there is nothing happening on Tuesday. Wednesday is a checkup day. So there are some placeholders there. And usually there is a monthly meeting, like some monthly reports or retrospectives or these kind of things that happen on Wednesdays. And then Thursday and Friday are again free right now. So, of course, there are some meetings that happen on tactical level, but when I look like 3 weeks forward into my calendar, usually it's just Monday and Wednesday that are booked with meetings. Tuesday and Thursday I usually have for some creative work or sales meetings or coming to events, depending on what the priorities are, because these things change very fast, and I can decide on Friday what I would like to do. And looking more realistically right now into my next week, it actually looks quite optimistic. I do have just a single call on Tuesday. There is just a single call on Friday. The only thing that Thursday is a strategic session, but again, it's a seasonal thing. It will move away. So I mean that my next week from January 22nd to 28th seems pretty close to perfect.
Do you put on your calendar like smaller things, like I don't know, like fitness workouts, breakfast, dinners, stuff like that?
I don't. The only thing that most people book meetings with me in Calendly, and there is lunchtime that is not available for booking.
Out, yeah.
The only thing that is there is a busy slot for some things when I have to be online. Like I have this TRX training with a trainer and working with a fitness coach. Like I have to opt this time out. But when it's just my time, like, I mean, I work out by myself, I usually don't put it on the calendar.
I was looking at the the articles that you link to, and all of them have plans for like my ideal week, whatever it is. And what strikes me there is like the people suggest that they live by super detailed plan and schedule for their week. Like someone has shower, dress, and eat each weekday 9 to 9:30, but then on wait, no, that's American, so it starts on Sunday, so it's not it's not a work week. I wonder if they confused themselves there, but maybe not. But then on Thursday they want to eat 8:30 to 9, and apparently don't want to shower and dress on that day. But then also on Friday they want to eat back 9 to 9:30, and then on Saturday they want to shower and dress but not eat, but also do that half an hour later. Like I don't understand how this could work.
I know a few people who do that, and basically it's for ones who struggle keeping in mind the routines. And they do use it like a reminder, basically like you use your theme journal when you have these like check boxes. And the calendar is that kind of place where they go to see like, all right, I'm in the morning time, like what's there in my calendar right now. People don't follow these things very much as far as I know. Like they are not strict guidelines. A few of my colleagues do that. Like when they share their calendars with me, I can either see the full details, like including the psychotherapy sessions, runs, and something else, or it could be just busy, but I can see that it's busy like from 7 a.m. till like a very busy life.
Yeah, I guess I was not fair when I exclaimed that this could never work. Of course, like I can see how this would work for me, but for other people's for other people, mileage may vary, and I feel for me I would not never able to do that, because it's still like I cannot start a day at 8:30, because on one day I can start at 8:20, another day it will be 8:45, and if the calendar gets out of sync with reality, it will trigger OCD for me, and it will ruin my whole day. But probably for other people who don't have kids, dogs, and other stuff, it might be easier to stick to very specific routine.
Once again, they don't do it. They don't stick to that. Like they just don't care, because I think that you take calendars very seriously. Like things that get into the calendar have to happen.
No, but I think it's easier, right? If would you put a flight or a kind of train ride in a calendar?
I would book it if it's during the business hours, like so nobody could set up a call during this time.
Okay, because I would put, and I treat the calendar as a thing that at this time I have to be there, and I sort of, for simplicity, I want all things in the calendar to be like that. I don't want to have to spend extra cognitive cycles on processing. Oh, this is a flight, so I cannot miss that, and I don't want to train myself that, hey, if it is a meeting in the calendar but it says eat at a specific time and I can be willy-nilly with it, I don't want that to translate into something like flights or something else.
I think it works for me in some cases when I struggle with the discipline. Let's say workouts, like when I have the workout booked with my coach, I definitely come there. When it's my self-paced thing, I tend to skip. And when I feel that I have skipped 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I book it for a few weeks to have a dedicated slot to definitely do it for the next couple of weeks to get back on track and rebuild the habit. But then I give it up because once it's set and I know that I keep doing that, like, all right, it's a re-established habit, then I can get back to more flexible planning.
That's fair. That's fair. So I was kind of surprised by how those people plan it. And I was also kind of intrigued that you linked to 3 articles and there are 3 ideal week plans. And all three of them have date night on Friday. It's like, are they kind of copying, pasting from each other?
Come on, Friday is an amazing day for a date.
Right, but like, do you plan it? Like, do you put it in the calendar? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, let's say it's a family ritual, like somebody invites a spouse on a date, and
right,
why not?
For the sake of efficiency, shouldn't people kind of randomize that? Because if everyone and their dog goes on date night on Friday, like every single place would be super busy, and you will not be able to get a date night. But if you spread evenly, it gives more chance for people to enjoy different venues and be.
Dima. No.
no, it doesn't work like that. Right, no. Sorry. But there is also another interesting question I wanted to kind of discuss with you in relation to those calendars, because some of the things there sort of maybe make sense, like lunch. All of them plan lunch for an hour, I think, except one calendar which only has lunch on Saturday. Okay, people are built differently, but in general, like if they put breakfast or time to eat for half an hour, and I'm thinking, like, for half an hour is not depending on your circumstances, but by and large, half an hour is not sufficient to cook and eat your breakfast, or just barely. It may not be sufficient to go out for breakfast, because depending on your situation, just walking to the place or driving to a breakfast place can take time, and you would take some time to eat your breakfast. And like planning for half an hour might be extreme, but in order, if one can set a goal to have a breakfast that takes no longer than half an hour, but then in order to fulfill that commitment to themselves, some sort of prep would be required, right? Like you may want to pre-cook some stuff, like figure out how to make this thing happen in half an hour. How those people do not account for that in their planning. But when you encounter a situation like this, so you want some routine things to be faster, just to be more efficient, but this efficiency requires some sort of preparation ahead of time. How do you, first of all, do you have anything like that, and if so, how do you deal with that?
Well, I'd say that there are some emergency plans. Like, for instance, there's always cereal for breakfast in case you're lacking the time and there are 10 minutes left and you have to jump on the meat, and like it's there, milk and flakes and banana, and just mix it up.
That just works.
Technology helps a lot. Like we do have this, I'm sure it's a steamer, like the thing that cooks by itself, and I could just throw something into it, and then in 30 minutes it will be done, and then it can stay hot for an hour or two, or whenever I'm ready to eat it. So like if I know my lunchtime, for example, is going to be squeezed because of some kind of emergency, I can pre-cook something that from the freezer, for instance, not to go for the full thing. And having some extra time slots for the emergency, like let's say when you have these 20-minute blocks between the calls. This is something like, all right, I didn't have time to fully eat and cook my breakfast, but I can definitely get a snack or have some fruits or have a tea in between, not to feel hungry or angry in the process, or both.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think what I do, probably this is similar to what you do. It is, instead of actually scheduling or planning in a time planning kind of sense, you have a plan of what to do under different conditions. Like what's the quick breakfast, what's the proper breakfast if you have time, what's the what are the different options, and then basically you equip yourself with options and opportunities, and you pick and choose whatever suits the particular moment. And therefore, I also kind of don't like how they plan shower, dress, and eat for specific time on specific dates.
But I would say that I do have some, I don't know, morning routines, let's put it this way. I wouldn't name them specifically, but they could last up to an hour and a half, or they could last 15 minutes, depending on what day it is and when I wake up. And by the way, I don't wake up with an alarm, so I just wake up whenever I wake up. And
good for you.
Sometimes when I feel really exhausted, I can set up an alarm just in case, but I still usually wake up before. And I don't really know, but on average, an hour in the morning is enough to fulfill most of the things that I would like to fulfill. And then I'm free to go to work and get stuff done there. But then again, during the day, there is a variety. Like even the workout, you could do a 15-minute workout, 30-minute workout, 45-minute workout, depending on what your mood is, what the weather is, what your other plans are, and so.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's also how I sort of do and approach this. The difference with me is that I do have alarms to wake me, get me up and going. But then also I figured that no matter how much of wishful thinking energy I invest into it, like the morning routine takes more or less set time, and unless you throw something out, which might be difficult to do in the morning, there is a set of things that you want to do one way or the other. You sort of have to do them in order to start functioning as a proper adult human after that. And you would just know, right? It takes me half an hour from waking up to walking out, start walking out with the dog. No matter how I try, on average, it's like half an hour or something along those lines, and it just helps to know how it goes. And then if I want to get going to the office, for example, and be there by 9, I would know that like walk with the dog is hour and a half ish, and half an hour to kind of get going. So you need to wake up at this time. If you don't, then you can kiss goodbye to your plan to be in the office at 9 a.m.
Before we call it a day, I think we should discuss the risk management thing, like when things go wrong. I know your answer already, but how do you handle things that don't go according to the plan?
I don't like when that happens. I kind of it kind of gets me irritated and throws me out of my stride for a little while. But I guess I my plan and idea is to kind of be easy on myself when that happens and say like, yeah, that's like weather. Try to adopt a weather attitude kind of thing. Like the thing happened. What's the best next thing I can do given that this thing happened, and sort of move on. How do you deal with that?
I tend to keep my Friday free. Like I try not to get anything important on Friday. So if I miss something important on the day before or a few days before, I could catch up. And this strategy has been working so far. Unless this is something really excruciating, and then I can procrastinate even on Friday, and then it still doesn't get done. But if it's not the case, then usually, like most of the difficult things should happen on Tuesday. The most difficult things. The medium things on Thursday, and the easiest stuff on Friday. So then, by this logic, if something doesn't go according to my plan on Tuesday, or some extra meetings happen on Wednesday, or something goes not according to the plan, my Friday is usually quite flexy, and I can fit in some extra work there.
That sounds good. So basically, you're having your Friday as a buffer day, sort of thing.
And it has been helping a lot. Like I haven't had weeks with some serious stuff that I had to reschedule to the next week for half a year, I guess. Like there are some things that I keep procrastinating, but I count them as the separate category. Like, it's not because I don't have time for them. I'm just not ready mentally to do them. I have these 2 hours, but I can do something else and just look other way. I see the task and I choose not to do it.
Yep, that sounds good.
So I guess we could round up here, and hopefully you will have a few very according to the plan weeks.
Very ideal weeks. Should we start wishing our listeners ideal weeks or perfect weeks instead of just plain old good weeks?
I would rephrase it into the wish of let your next week be 1% closer to your ideal week than the last week. And let it just move slowly into the direction of this ideal week. And then when you're almost there, when you're 99% of your ideal week, it might even slow down, and then you'll be getting 0.1% closer and closer and closer. And then you'll just decide that, no, my ideal week should look differently, and start the process all over again.
All right, so everyone have a good week discombobulating yourself around this Zeno paradox around weekly planning that Slava just introduced us to. And we will hear you very soon.
See you.